Well, hello YouTube. Welcome to Viking Preparedness. I'm Pastor Joe Fox. I was just out feeding my bees a little bit of sugar water to help them store up some extra food and get through the winter. That's fast approaching. And it got me in mind of this video and what I wanted to talk to you about today. Now, you know that there are preppers and there are survivalists, right? Well, I consider myself a survivalist, and I'll tell you why. Preppers try to prepare, and I believe, and this is my definition, if yours is different, that's okay, but I believe that they prepare for an emergency, a situation that's of limited duration. That could be a hurricane, that could be a big earthquake or something, but I think at the end of the day that preppers think that things are pretty much going to get back to normal. And I believe that survivalists prepare for not only those things, but also if things get so bad that you don't recognize them ever again. Things are never the same. What is that? Without rule of law? Preppers could prepare for that. Katrina, in the aftermath of Katrina, there was no real rule of law there in some sections of New Orleans for a period of time, but then things kind of came back to normal. But when the stuff hits the fan, things may never get the same. And so, survivalists, in my experience, which is fairly vast, go through a series of steps on their journey to ultimate survivalism, if you will. And the first thing they do is this. They typically put together a bug out bag, a bob, and a lot of people think I'm going to take my bob and when things get terrible, I'm going to hit the woods and I'm going to live like Jeremiah Johnson or some mountain man out there in the woods forever. That's not going to happen. That's not going to work. When you have a bug out bag and you're in the woods, you're just a refugee with more gear than the average refugee. A bug out bag has to have a plan that goes with it, and I'm not getting into that now, but I would say that's probably the first step most people take, is they build a bug out bag. My wife and I, back in the 80s, were survivalists, and we built not only bug out bags, but a bug out footlocker. And I recently found the footlocker we put together that in our mind we were going to go live in these mountains with this footlocker, and one of these days I'll probably make a video of that and show you all what we put in there. It's humorous now, it's kind of sad actually. But what's the next step? The next step that people take in survivalism is, you know what, a bug out bag isn't enough, I need more supplies. And so they start gathering all kinds of things. They gather food, some people gather nuclear, biological, chemical gear, they gather guns, they gather bullets, batteries, radios, and first it starts out it's their survivalist closet, then it's their survivalist room, and then you get the survivalist garage or outbuilding or basement, and pretty soon they just have a whole lot of stuff, right, so that they can survive whatever they think is coming down the pike. And it starts to dawn on them that no matter how much stuff they have, it's still limited. When you use that last D-cell battery, when you use that last CR123 battery, you're not getting any more. And so then what they start thinking about, the next step, if you will, in the process of survivalism, is I need to start becoming more self-sufficient. I need to start having the ability to produce things for myself. And that's when you see people starting to do things like build gardens or get a couple chickens so they can have some eggs or raise some meat and things like that. And then that just starts to build and build and build until you get people, they have goats maybe for milk, they have a big garden that they're growing, and maybe they bought a piece of property somewhere and they have woods that they can power their wood stove with and things like that. And that's where the vast majority of people stop, right there, is their little self-sufficient homestead. But what they start realizing, even if they don't like admitting it to themselves or if they come up with excuses why it just wouldn't work for them, is that one man alone, one man and his wife and maybe even their teenage kids alone is not going to make it. We as humans, I think I talked about this in one of my earlier videos, we're social creatures. Almighty Yah created us to be social creatures. And We do our best when we're with other people. You can't garden, take care of animals, rig up a water collection system, pull security and sleep all at the same time. And in a bad situation, you're going to have to pull some security, probably going to have some patrols, you're going to have to man an outpost or something like that, and you're going to quickly realize that you need more people. And, you know, there's people who write, people, who was that guy? Mel Tappan. You know, he wrote a lot about survivalism back in the day. Most of you probably don't even know who he is. Look him up on Google. And one of the things he would talk about was you want to live outside of a small town, a town that could provide you with a dentist or a doctor or, you know, some semblance of security. I think a smarter idea really is to move into a small town, a town of people who generally get it, of people who have gardens and have supplies and are of a survivalist mindset. Well, Pastor Joe, where is that town? Yeah, I don't know. You know, you got to look for one. Which leads us to the next point, the next step in the evolutionary process of the survivalist, and that is this: forming a group. All right, people say, I can't move to a town, so I'm going to form a group, and some do, some don't. Some groups have lasted a long time, some groups break apart. The biggest problem I have seen with groups is people form a group with people of like mind, but they don't live near them. And quite frankly, if you can't walk to another group member's home in, you know, a day, they're not doing you any good in a survival situation. Potentially they're not doing you any good in a survival situation. And it's hard to get together to train, it's hard to be together, and so that has its own problems with it. But hey, a group is better than nothing, and all the cards could line up correctly, and you could end up being with your group when something happened. And so I'm not trying to discourage you from that. But really, I think the finest survivalist solution is to live in a community of people of like mind. Most of the times you either have to form a community or you have to join an already established community. And you have to decide for yourself what's important to you. Because for me, I don't want to compromise on some things. You know, I have a relationship with the Most High. I'm not going to compromise that. I will not be unequally yoked with others who don't have a very similar relationship. That's my choice. That may not be your choice. You may not want to be around people who smoke. You know, that could be one of your caveats. Whatever it is, you need to think about this, because really the best idea is, they called them intentional communities. They used to call them communes back in the 60s, but they're groups of people who decide to live together on a piece of property. I encourage you to do some research on YouTube. Look up intentional communities, ICs. A lot of them are hippie pagans, you know, who are out there free love and dancing around naked in the woods or something. But a lot of them are not. Many intentional communities now are what they're self-labeled eco-villages, and they're living green. And you know, there may be some politics that go along with that, and they may worry about global warming, which, you know, hey, man didn't create this earth and man's not going to destroy this earth. But whatever. I'm all for living closer to the land. I'm all for using less resources. That just makes sense from a survivalist standpoint. And so there are communities that are out there doing that. They're trying to live self-sufficiently as possible. They're trying to be off the grid. And imagine if you lived with a group of like-minded people off the grid. Well, then when the grid went down, you wouldn't really care, would you? Imagine living with a group of people who were into permaculture or organic gardening or farming or something like that, that produced all its own food. Producing your own food could be a very good thing. It's a good thing today. It could be an exceptionally good thing down the road here a bit. You have to find a group that meets your needs. I encourage you all to start thinking about that. I encourage you all to do some research, do some praying, do some studying, and start contacting people. You know, most intentional communities out there accept visitors. You can go visit, you know, give them some money for room and board, help out around the place for a couple days, see what the work's like, get a feel for it. And if that community is not a perfect fit for you, you'll still learn things that maybe you can go out and start your own community. I'll tell you this though, when you decide to join a community, you have to give up some things of yourself in order for the greater good to survive. Those are choices you have to make. Most people, I think, are not willing to make those choices. Most people are fairly selfish. But from a purely survivalistic standpoint, being with a group of like-minded people on a functioning farmstead, homestead, with your standard operating procedures already worked out, with your relationships already worked out, having already gone through hard times together and good times together, so that you know how each one is going to act and respond in different circumstances. That's worth more than gold. Y'all think about that. Thanks, and I'll see you.